Hello, welcome back to I Got Board Game. Woo! And this is the second video we said we would be doing right after our review, non-spoiler review of Time Stories. And so now we're going into the first scenario of Time Stories that comes in the base game that we mentioned called Asylum. And so it says, do not open before reading the rules. So this is the scenario that actually comes in the base game, and this is the whole deck of it that you'll be using to set up the scenario, and then each of the locations, whatever, success, fail cards, everything that you'll get through while you're playing that scenario. Mm-hmm. And so for this was a spoiler review. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. But know that it's not a full spoiler, so we're not revealing everything. We still want you guys to enjoy this game, experience it, definitely experience it. So we won't reveal the details of what happens at the end of the scenario, but we will be revealing details that we came across while getting there when John and I played this the first time way back then. And so that's basically what this is going to be. This isn't going to be a video with a overview again of how Time Stories is played. We will maybe mention certain mechanics or themes from the Asylum scenario. But if you want an overview, quick overview of how the game plays, that's back in our original first video of Time Stories. And so this one will just be us going into sharing our experience of the Asylum scenario. And so we will, with that spoiler warning, spoiler alert, we will get into it. So Asylum, first scenario, the theme, right, was also something that was interesting, right? Mm-hmm. That like we're presented with this game that looks really sleek and time travel like, and then you're shown on the back of the box that you're traveling back to earlier time period, 1921, yep. Insane asylum, and you're like, whoa, that's dark. That's different for a game and dark.
I was like, it's not your standard location you'd go to in a time travel game. That's not usually the first place people time travel back to. So it's definitely different.
And I think I remember when hearing about it, like through like a preview video, what was interesting about it is the idea of the whole receptacle mechanic, right? We're going back in time and basically taking over the body of someone in this insane asylum. And so then that was a cool part where it's like, oh, so like your character in this first game you're playing is actually going to be a patient at this insane asylum. So you'll be you, like thinking and trying to play through the game, and yet you have whatever kind of characteristics, illness that these people have because you are in their body. And that was kind of a hook to it too, where it's like, ooh, what kind of characters are we playing as then?
Yeah, because then it's thinking like, oh, if they're in an insane asylum, there's going to be some wonky things going on with them. So what is going to happen? And like, how are you supposed to solve mysteries in these characters that are supposed to be patients, right? Which is also kind of like that's not normal as well. So,
and so then part of it, this is a picture we showed in our other video, but this is an example of like the first room you'll go to in Asylum, the day room, part of the panorama of it. So this kind of just gives a sense of the art, which I thought was great. Like it's not, so the time theme I liked. Insane Asylum theme I was not as drawn to. But then like the artwork like is so well done, right? It has like this, captures the setting in that kind of old time look, and yet it's just very detailed art though. So it's really nice. But then getting onto those characters we mentioned that you get to choose to be those receptacles. We have, let me see if I can switch to it. Ooh. Felix Bonenfant is, I think there were 5 or 6 characters you could choose from. Yeah. And so this is the back of the character card, and then the front side of it with all his stats and little, the character's ability, his life, hit points, defense, his skills. And then you have, in this case, his illness. He has paranoia, which then also then plays into the game, right? It says when Felix has accumulated 3 tokens, his paranoia spikes and he attacks another agent present in the same space as himself. So that's a thematic detail to the character, which is also something you have to plan for then. Like, you are this character, and yet you can be paranoid.
Yep. Because it's like you're an agent and you have your own mind, but you've got the experience of the character, which is that their mind has, like, the body is afflicted with paranoia. So you're kind of like doubling into them in that way. So.
And so then you also have a couple other characters that mainly I just want to show the art and the idea that they have like an illness. There is Marie Berthollet, who is erotomania, an erotomaniac. Marie is convinced that the people who come up to her are madly in love with her, but don't dare let her know. Over time, she's gained a real talent for convincing the people to whom she's speaking to fall under her charm. I think this art is very nice. I do think the details are really nice. It's like really like even just like the graphic design, the background to the character art itself, but then it also fits this erotomania kind of affliction. Oh gosh. And yeah, this yellow skill in this scenario was like charm,
kind of like your charisma or charm in speaking with people.
Yeah, so she's the most charming one you could be. And then we have Madeleine de Tulel.
Box art girl.
So we were talking about this, right? When we saw this character as an option, we were like, she's like a murderer or something.
We were like, she looks like a zombie murderer. She's gonna eat your brain. She's gonna eat people. Scary.
And then
that was before we read her character.
Yeah, she has anxiety attacks. Madeleine can't stand solitude. When she's on a space with no other agents, she rolls 1 fewer die. However, all other living agents are present. When all other living agents are present in the same space, she rolls 1 more die. And that's when we decided to make her the fighter, right?
Because then she gets 3 stat on her fighting and 3 on her green, which is really good.
So she became very useful, just making sure. But then we had a plan to like have her follow someone. And actually, I think the way we played was since it was just the 2 of us playing, I think the rules was did we both have to be 2 characters?
We got to control 2 different.
Yeah. So that's how it wasn't as hard as it might sound to have her follow someone. It's not just both of us being 1 character, so one of us has to always follow someone.
The worst would have been if we played 3 players, because then you only get 3.
Yeah. And then 2 players are basically always having to stay together wherever they go. But yeah, so she became very helpful, the scary girl.
She's MVP.
And so again, this is like a look at the art. Oh gosh, I mean this one is particularly like haunting looking, which is also kind of to capture the theme. But I think it's done so well, even though it's not the kind of art I would normally like.
Not necessarily aesthetically pleasing for most people. But
yeah, put this as my phone wallpaper. But yeah, so going more into our experience, this was the first scenario. So this was our first time playing the whole system. And in that way, there wasn't really anything we could say right now about like new mechanics. Because we mentioned like other scenarios introducing new mechanics or switching things up, where this was the first experience, so there wasn't really anything to compare to. But then the experience itself, what did you think, or what did you want to share?
It was very well done, right? So as we're saying, it's an insane asylum, right? So I think if I remember what the scenario was exactly, is like so when you start in the T.I.M.E agency, right? First time you're playing this game, you've got the character Bob that I think we've mentioned a couple of times. He's your kind of director who's kind of gets you started into getting into the world and kind of what you're doing, gives you the briefings and all that stuff. So we might have some comments about Bob later. I don't know if we want to go into them right away, but that's Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Baldy Bob. But basically what he's telling you is like, hey, we're time agents. Your job is you need to fix anomalies that are happening in the time-space continuum. So you need to go back in time and figure out what's going on. There's a disturbance in this time period in this insane asylum. And so I think what it was there's a doctor that you need to find in the insane asylum, and you need to figure out what is he doing in that time period. I believe that was the anomaly, and it's like you need to figure out what he's doing, and if he's doing something that is causing a problem, you need to stop it. And then that's it. And then they talk about, of course, the normal time paradox stuff of like, hey, try not to mess things up too much and don't, change anything in the past too significantly. Don't leave anything behind. Don't, of future technology, whatever, right? Kind of stuff. And then the other thing he tells you is, by the way, we're on a budget because we're poor for some reason. And the time agency doesn't have a lot of money. So you need to limit the amount of times we send you back in time. Because, right, they were saying, like, because we own these time machines, you can always go back in time. But we're on a tight budget because money is scarce and hard to find, and it's expensive to send people back in time. So try not to use the machine as much as possible.
That's always the case he gets on you for. It's like, hey, it's expensive to send you guys back in time, okay? Why'd you mess up? Why are you back here?
Yeah. So it kind of sets you up into the world, and then that's when it sends you into the asylum. So as we were saying, it's like, as you're going through it, you're like selecting the characters first. So already like looking at the characters and they first experience, it's like, yeah, the artwork wise and stuff, it's like, these characters do look kind of crazy. These were kind of weird characters to be going back in time into, but okay. And then we got transported into the first place, as you can see here in the artwork. I don't even think it's the full spread, but like, there's that girl that's standing in front of the painting with her hair down, which is like totally like the Ring style of like horror girl. So I remember when we first saw it, my first instinct was like, I don't want to go anywhere near that card because it's gonna show up in my face and she's gonna be like pop scare, and I'm just not having none of this. So I was like, Ben, you have to go here because I'm not going there.
Yeah, no, I remember like, yeah, we have those kind of considerations of like, okay, do you think we're gonna have to like fight her or we're gonna have to like look at her painting and like even like take notes on like what is in the painting, which I think is something that might have happened where there's different times, where you go somewhere and you might need to take notes just to try to remember like, okay, this is what I actually saw, or this is what the person said, and so then I can tell John. I mean, like for me, even before like going to a location, it was just seeing the panorama, and it's like, whoa, this is gonna be cool. Of like going here, and whoever goes there is gonna interact with this guy. I don't know, play chess or something, ask him something, and then obviously the scary girl is like, what's she painting, and is she gonna like attack us or something?
Yeah.
And that was just like that very feeling of trying that panorama exploration mechanic for the first time of like, ooh, we're going on an adventure.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that's really cool. So we've talked about other games of having unique art style, and Ben talked about this in the previous review as well, but like the way that the Time Stories world in this scenario in particular, each of the locations that you go to really fits kind of the description of what you're doing and what's going on in the circumstance. So like when you see like this space, right? So this day room kind of feels like what a day room in an insane asylum might actually look like from that time period of like, yeah, there's a nurse that's kind of in that room that's kind of maybe standing on the side, kind of watching everyone inside. You've got this random patient sitting down in front of that, I believe it looks like a chessboard, and you've got the girl like standing in front of a painting, and it's kind of really creepy and it's kind of weird, but that's that would happen, right? Like that's something you would likely see in an insane asylum. Like that's the kind of thing that might just be there on a normal day, right? Because that's the other thing. It's like you're transported into this time, and it's just like that is the day of that time period, right? It's not like anything, so to speak, extraordinary as far as we could tell so far. Maybe we're looking for something that way, but like for places that are normal, it's like thinking of a detective show. Like if like Sherlock Holmes and Watson were going to like there's a random place, and it's just the day-to-day activities of what's happening in the space. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember even coming into it being like, since we had to find clues and stuff, I was like, I had no idea of like how much will I need to remember to tell my teammate, like what do I need to pay attention to? Does the card itself on the backside show me something that I should pay attention to that I'll see when I go there? And so I think that was just cool, like that way, like you have to care about the details, depending on the scenario. Like this one, I think you had to pay more attention to details than
yes,
some of the other scenarios. And so yeah, it's like there's also other locations where it's like, you know, outside in the courtyard, or even in like a certain different
the doctor's
wing
office,
of,
right?
yeah, the office, different wing of this insane asylum, where then like you'll see the back of cards like this, and you'll maybe react like John's, like I don't want to go there, but then you probably know you need to go there to find
At some
something
point,
out.
yep.
And
Or it's
then
like even like thinking of the receptacle, right? Characters that we were saying. It's like, okay, there's a guy that's sitting there. We probably want to send someone who knows how to talk to people, for example, right? Or it's like we see something that seems a little bit more dangerous or sketchy, and it's like, okay, maybe we should send one of the tough guys that we have, or one of the tough people characters that we have that maybe has more life and seems to be able to hold themselves in a fight, right? Because it might be
yeah,
important to have them during that's
and that was cool because that really is just kind of a judgment based on like what you're looking at, right? Of like, yeah, if we think like we need to talk to this person, or we got to the office and we need to talk to this person in the office, like maybe send the lady who's charming, you know,
Yep.
because that might end up being a challenge where we need to convince the person. And so yeah, that was cool. Those small considerations were cool, in that they aren't just like randomly decided, but you can even start to maybe gauge it based on the backside artwork. And so then there was also, well, I mean, even something I do want to say, because we mention this every time too. When we played this first scenario, it was at night, and it was on, I think, Good Friday, for us Catholics,
Springtime,
celebrating,
like right before Easter.
right before Easter, and doing a specific prayer at our church that night. There was a certain event for that, and so we were playing this in like the evening, and it was getting dark, and then we had to kind of pause and leave it, and then go to church and attend that kind of event, that service, and then come back and play it when it was even later at night with this insane asylum theme. It got spooky. It got spooky. And that's something that like definitely stuck with me, not just because of how that event happened to us, but it really kind of added to it, I would say, right? Of like how spooky the game got, because it is also this mystery in an insane asylum we're playing at night.
Yeah, and it was like it had to do with some of the things we had to do in the game that made it especially spooky and scary. Because there's like, right, one of the things we didn't say in the non-spoiler review is like we are solved, right? Like you're trying to solve some puzzles that are going on, right? So as we're kind of trying to figure out this mystery, there are things we need to solve and things we need to do. And so through the series of exploring different locations that are showing up and places that weren't there to begin with, and we find in time, and kind of the places that we're directed to kind of led more and more to these, like, it kind of continued this insane asylum feel of like more spooky, scary things going on, where it's like, okay, an insane asylum already is not the happiest place on earth, let's just say, but it just became even more like, okay, this is even creepier than the insane asylum itself. And that's saying a lot because it's already kind of creepy as it is.
Yeah, I mean, the puzzles that we had to get through and find clues for and like take notes on as we were realizing that, oh, this detail seemed to be in that other picture we saw in that other room. Maybe we need to note it so it might match up to something later. Like that definitely stuck with me, because in the end, like the puzzles ended up seeming like the game, like in a way was playing us.
Yeah.
Not to make it too creepy sounding, but it's like the game knows things, and like it knows we're figuring it out.
Exactly. And that was definitely something that was like not expected, right? Because of the way that the game, right? Like we're talking about it, it's a time story game. So it's like, I think it is even kind of a little bit of this understanding of like, oh, is this just a choose your own adventure style game where it kind of like ultimately you just, once you reveal, like once you go through all the cards, you've kind of revealed everything and it's no big deal, right? Like, or it's like, okay, well, yes, it's kind of scary because it's kind of the story that you're going through and then that's it. But then with the way that these puzzles worked, that it added more than just I'm just flipping cards over and just reading through cards. Like it actually took in elements of us putting in more thought into the game itself.
Yeah,
we had to realize what was happening.
We had to be, in a sense, we had to be aware of more than the game world itself. And in a way, it had that, I don't know the right term, but like that meta game feel, where it's like, not just you're in the game playing, but you have to be aware of you guys as players playing the game and what you need to do to solve the puzzle. And that was when like kind of the potential of the unique mechanics that Time Story can do and does in different ways in the later scenarios, that's when it kind of hit us. It's like, whoa, that's what a board game can do. It can not just like be about its own story, but force us as players to do something outside of the game to figure out and solve the game. That's that feeling I mean of the game knows we're solving, or the game is playing us. Yeah. That was just mind-blowing and freaky when it happened. And I don't mean to scare people on this first one, because it is more of like a wow moment of being like, wow, board games can actually do this, right? Where it's like, it's very rare in video games. There are video games that also do similar things, but very rare, where it's like you're playing the game and then you have to do something in the real world to actually affect the game you're playing. Like I think of, not to spoil too much about this Time Stories or even the video game, but like people who know the Metal Gear Solid series. Is that too much? Is that too much spoiler of something else?
It's fine.
The first game, which came out like
been out for so long,
more than like 20 years ago.
But spoiler alert.
Like in Metal Gear Solid, there's like parts of the game where you can get around things by unplugging your controller and plugging it in the other slot. This was back on PlayStation 1, just so you guys know. That was like so novel. It's like, whoa, I'm not just like in the game doing something. I have to do something in the real world to get around what the game is telling me to do. And so in a way, like that's kind of what this scenario in Time Stories had us do at a certain point, right? Where it's like, whoa, we're doing more than just playing inside this world. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and by solving that, then it kind of led us into the final puzzles and final encounters in the story, which was like, it was kind of that culmination of things. And that also felt really crazy too, because it's like we solved this huge puzzle and the payoff was huge too. It wasn't something that was like, oh, okay, you solved the puzzle, game over, and then it's just done. There was still a little bit more to the game that happened after that. So like even getting that kind of continued payoff of the climactic, aspect of this game too, where it wasn't just like, oh, you solved the puzzle and you're done. So yeah, and that added to the experience of just like, what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah, I mean the ending too can kind of can also kind of begin the overall story through all of Time Stories too. It has like a hint of that, and so if you discover that, that's also very cool. You're kind of like, oh, so there is this kind of standalone Asylum story we just finished, and then that might tie into something later on too.
Yeah, it throws in a little bit of like the kind of like what you'd see sometimes in some other games, so like Easter egging kind of a little bit, but then it's more of this like Easter egg of, and kind of that understanding of the meta of this world and the meta gaming, that it's more than just these scenarios that you play through. There's other things that are going on in this world and in this space that are just like, ooh, this is why we keep going back in time. Ooh, interesting. Or like, wait, what does this have to do with things?
Yeah, it's like yeah, who's like, well, I mean, because we know we're trying to keep the timeline intact, like who's messing up this timeline, you know?
Or like, why is it being messed up in the first place, right? Like, what is causing these things to happen? And like I would say it's kind of akin to if you watch MCU stuff, right? Right before, like when they first started teasing the Infinity Stones, right? When they the very first time they started teasing that, where especially for people who weren't Marvel fans, right, who didn't know anything, they're just like, what is going on? What is the solution? And then the Marvel fans being like, wait, are they going that direction? Are they taking it to that level? What?
That's a funny comparison, though. The Time Stories, the Marvel Cinematic Universe of board games.
The MCU of board games. Who knows? Maybe that was their inspiration, because Iron Man came out before this. So,
true. But then also, in saying all of this about our experience too, it's not also that we just like played through it straight. I think this one,
we played through it 4 times, I think, in total.
4 times.
Yeah. So we lost 3 times, I think, or we ran out of time 3 different times.
I think I have it logged as.
Or is it 4 different times?
3 times in total.
Oh, 3 times.
It took us 3 runs to beat it. That's what I have recorded.
Did we fake reset one of them after the plunger incident?
That wasn't my fault. So why I mentioned this is because to indicate that it also wasn't just like straightforward going through this story that we're hinting at, where then it did take 3 runs, but then there are also, in a sense, red herrings and dead ends you could end up going to and wasting time on. But there's like story to it that you're kind of like, it's like, oh, is it true? Like there's I mean, I do want to mention, as you mentioned, the plunger. That was you though, right? You went.
It was all me. So I think it's like we were like in the courtyard. Right?
Yeah, and then there's a person who's obviously another patient in this insane asylum who's like,
he has like a top hat. He's got like a suit, like a tuxedo, I think.
Yeah, or I think outside, but inside, I think he might not. He might have just been wearing like regular clothes or something.
Yeah, something like that.
So he looked kind of, out of it.
Yeah, I think he looked like he kind of looked a little bit like a clown, but kind of in like a conductor's uniform, not like not a train conductor, but like a musician conductor.
Yeah. Right? And then he's on one of the cards in the courtyard, so you could like go explore there and see what happens and probably talk to him. And it's like when you talk to him, it's like he starts talking like was he talking like an agent?
Yeah, he's alluding to like knowing secret plans, and that like he has a secret understanding of this world that is not of this world.
And was also something from, right? Like he knows like what you're doing here, or like
he's like, I know what your job is here. I have like I'm in the know basically. So it's like all these things that's like, because we were also told that there are other agents in this in the right?
field.
So we know that there's other people who can help us, right? Or it's mentioned that there might be agents that you can connect with in the series. So when I started hearing him talking like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this might be one of the agents. Like he's so undercover that it's like he could really give us something. And then I know Ben was kind of like, I don't think this is.
Yeah, I think he's just a crazy person, John.
But then I was like, no, this has got to be one of our agents.
And then he's like, needed us to get a certain item for him, right? Or was it just spend?
No, I think it was just spend some time with him.
Right? Yeah, spend time doing something for him.
So then
but it
he'll
just costs
help us
time
get an
units.
item. That
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
He was gonna get us something if we
Yeah.
spent time with him to do to
And
get
so
it
that
done.
was why
And
it
we had to
was a
spend I
problem,
think it was
because
3
it's
time units.
yeah,
So it was
yeah.
a lot of
It's like
time.
you need to spend time doing something for him here, then he'll reward you. It's like, I don't think we should waste time on him, John. You already wasted time talking to him.
But I overrode Ben in that circumstance. I was like,
And
no, no.
what did you get, John?
And then at the end of his ritual, I believe it was 5 hours later, he gave me some number, and it was a plunger.
It was a regular plunger.
And then
Which
after that,
does nothing.
After that, I thought maybe this plunger is going to be really important later, and we should hold on to it just in case, because it's so random and out there that it could be the most important item that we need.
John went crazy going into this this time.
I just truly embraced the receptacle and the scenario that I was.
So that is a kind of experience that definitely sticks with us from that playthrough. Just like, oh my gosh, that was a total red herring, and someone fell for it.
I'm still convinced that there might be a use for the plunger 5 years later.
and then in this one too, also being the first scenario, in the theme itself, there is also those kind of mature content stuff. Like there is death, and that's part of the mystery you're solving. Like you do find blood and stuff, and you're trying to figure out, oh, what are they actually doing to the patients here? That's shady stuff. Shady stuff.
Yeah, and then I think we found at one point there's a list of patients that are missing, I think.
And then there was also a picture of I think the people who worked there, and they had symbols over their faces and stuff like that. And it's what does that mean? How do we understand this? So that's kind of a little bit of the freakiness of the puzzle, the mystery you're solving. But then also the other themes I mentioned, which also brought you into this setting of one of the characters you could be has a drug problem.
Yeah.
And I think he starts with some drugs on him.
Was that the PTSD guy, or was that the other one?
The other one,
the addict.
The one who looks like Joker.
Oh, all right, that was just the addict one. That's right. Well, I don't think we played him, right? We ended up not using him at all.
I think we might have used him.
Or did we use him once for one?
Because I think you could trade his crack for things.
Oh, right. There was an item in the kitchen, right? I think it was the chef or something.
Something like that.
You could trade the drugs to get particular items, or because if you I think it was if you have the drugs, you could do the trade, but then if not, then you have to try to negotiate, or you have to try to charisma the guy to give him to let you get the items or something. Yeah,
something like that. And so, but those were kind of cool moments too, where you notice oh, that's why there's a character with drugs. It's why? I mean, the drugs should actually be used by him too.
Yeah,
I think, right?
I think you can use them to get stat boosts. I think.
Yeah.
Or
a temporary stat boost.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because it's I mean, that makes sense for gamers. It makes sense, And then, but then also you do come across that other case where it's oh, that's also the purpose of drugs in this.
You can use the resource. Right, and it's a specialized character because it's unique to that particular character. It's not like the other characters start with drugs. It's only that particular character starts with the drugs. So
yeah. So there's just all those kind of moments that made it so fun.
And so memorable. Because I think at the end of all of it, it was what was it, 12 or 1 a.m. or something? It was really late. And then at that point I was Ben, can I just stay over? I don't want to leave the house because it's so scary.
The game.
Oh, it's so good.
Knows.
It knows. It knows. But it was great. Again, as we've said before, it's an experience. It's definitely an experience that's worth it, especially with the Time Story series.
And particularly, again, I just want to make sure you're all clear. Like, part of that is the theme itself, adding to that kind of freakiness, where other ones are more just straight up kind of, maybe a fantasy adventure or something like that.
Or
But this one
or
just has
something
those
that's not
darker themes
scary.
because of the darker setting.
Yeah.
And so, because I remember then a few years later trying to or convincing a couple of our friends to try the first scenario, and I was kind of just setting it up and teaching them and then letting them play it a bit, and then they stopped because it got freaky.
Weak.
But it's worth it. It's because even just from like a board game design standpoint, it's like, oh, it's just so mind-blowing that board games can create this experience for you. Yeah, it's so hard to describe, but it's definitely, that's why it's so highly rated from both of us, right? At least the Time Stories overall rating we gave it in our previous video. I think this scenario probably contributed quite a bit to that, being the first experience we have of it, first impression. But now we will actually give our rating for the Asylum scenario specifically, because each scenario could have different ratings depending on how well its new mechanics come about, how well the story,
and how the story was executed, and things like that.
So, what is your rating for Asylum?
My rating is a 0 out of 10 because it scared the living daylights out of me. No, I will give it a 9 out of 10. I think it is. I honestly do think it's the best scenario of all of the ones we've played through. Again, I think kind of what we talked about in terms of like setting was just done so well. The dynamics of the characters, the story of what you're dealing with, the puzzles that you have to deal with, kind of the things that we've been alluding to, and we don't want to spoil too much because we don't want to spoil the game. We won't go that far into spoiling.
Yeah, we didn't spoil the ending, right?
And
so
the ending as
you guys
well.
could
Like
still play
it's
it.
just everything in this scenario just really feels like it really sets up this space, this world, the circumstances, what you're doing, why you're doing things, the place that you're in, the feeling of being in that location. Like all of it is just done so well that, that's why I'm giving it a 9. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10, mainly because I think it is the theme. I'm just kind of like, I just can't. This is a little too much. But I don't really feel like I give things a 9 anyway. So a 9 is basically almost my highest score ever to ever give out. So yeah. And I don't like scary things too. So.
And for me, I give it, let me see if I can share the BGG entry, a 9.
Copy.
Which is the same entry I gave to Time Stories overall, because there's only this one Board Game Geek entry for the base game, which is the first scenario. But it just happens to be that I would rate the whole series overall a 9, but then specifically this first scenario 9 too. Basically for the same reasons as you described, that the theme, even though it's done really well, like with the artwork and the story that we're playing through and the reveals that we come across, it's done amazingly. But I think just thinking about the scenario specifically, it's not a theme I would want to play more of. Basically, it was good for that one time and amazing that one time. Don't make me go back there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's basically the only reason that it is a 9 for this specific scenario. Yeah, I mean, we'll be hopefully over time doing reviews of the other scenarios, so you guys can hear more about our experiences with those from what we can remember, our ratings for those. And yeah, for this one, even though it was a spoiler review, we tried to make sure not to spoil the ending portion of the scenario. So maybe the couple of takeaways that were spoiled is mainly that you need to pay attention to the clues on cards and don't trust the guy who will give you a plunger.
Yeah, but you don't know which guy that was. So I kind of described him, but you don't know for sure.
Yeah, you'll feel foolish when you actually go through everything and got the plunger and you're like, no, that's what they told us not to do.
Or go get the plunger because you can maybe figure out if there's a use for that plunger. Just saying.
So yeah, so that was our spoiler review of Time Stories Asylum, the first scenario that comes in the base game. So again, if you are getting Time Stories, even though it's a system, it comes with that first scenario. And so I believe Time Stories is either 50 or 60 bucks retail. You can maybe get it cheaper, like 45 maybe on certain sites at this point. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this spoiler review that didn't spoil the ending for you, so you can play it yourself, and definitely recommend it. We both give it a 9, the Asylum scenario. And so if you found this helpful, please share this spoiler review with your friends, family, whoever you think would be interested in trying this out with you. Hope you can try out the game yourself. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.